Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Geekly. We are doing our bonus review of Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. I'm Lex.
I'm Jules.
The first thing I want to say is, the film was beautiful. It really was. The aesthetic, the color palette. Joaquin Phoenix was amazing.
Oscar worthy.
Definitely Oscar worthy. Like, if he doesn't get at least a nomination, it will be a crime. Like, he really, really encapsulated the role, which is not surprising because he's, a pretty powerhouse actor. So you'd expect nothing less from him.
The guy learned a laugh. Like, he specifically did research. He studied people with this condition. He developed his own Joker laugh. That is commitment.
Yeah, well, he's a method actor.
Yeah,
so
and he said they were so painful to actually do. It was painful to do that laugh. But yeah, one of the great kind of method actors of our generation, and rocked it. I really hope he's certainly nominated. If he wins, it will be quite a statement.
Yeah, so that said, the film overall was boring as fuck. At one point, I literally checked my phone to see what time it was, to see how much time was left in the film. There were a couple things I liked. I liked the sort of, is he or isn't he Thomas Wayne's illegitimate child? I thought that was an interesting thing that really makes his relationship with Batman incredibly intriguing.
It's quite in vogue at the moment, isn't it? Because back in the day, it was Luke, I'm your father. You didn't know who people's parents were. This last minute twist. Recently, I think it was Spectre, where Blofeld became Bond's step brother or something. I can't remember exactly how it was, and that's the new thing now. It's siblings, unexpected
siblings, and dealing with that. I didn't really like the fact that Joker is about 3 decades older than Bruce Wayne at this point in time. Imagine this geriatric Joker going up against Batman. Doesn't really work for me. Although, if they'd ended it the way I wanted it to end, with Joker dying, basically, it could have opened up a thing for somebody else to sort of pick up the mantle and become the Joker that Batman deals with. But the ending, why don't you, before we get into the ending, what did you feel about the film?
It's one of the most beautiful things I've seen in a very long time. I think the opening 10 minutes are incredibly relatable. I want to emphasise, the opening 10 minutes are incredibly relatable. We've got this guy, he's very damaged, lots of health issues. He's one of life's losers, He's constantly getting bad news and not the kind of... He wants life to kind of meet him halfway, and it isn't. So those 10 minutes, you kind of think, okay, this is the way they're going with it. And then he suddenly becomes... We talked about Daenerys Targaryen, how quickly she went from, I'm a woman of the people, and suddenly she's burning King's Landing to fucking cinders. I felt the jump between him being one of life's losers with a shopping list of medications he's on because of all these problems, to the serial killer was probably a little bit too fast. I know it's a film, not a TV show.
It did happen incredibly quickly.
I would say so, yeah. The gun was in his life for like a day.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden he's like gunning people down, and not just... the scene in the subway car where he first shoots the other guys, you could see him kind of accidentally shooting them and being sort of like, whoa, what the fuck? But he wasn't. He doubled down and made sure he killed all 3 of them. And that sort of determination, I think we needed a few more steps to get to.
There are films where you've got powerless people, life's losers, and they have to find their strength. They have to find their power. Most of the time they become good people. They become maybe superheroes, or they'll become people that help people. This is a story where the guy's gone the other way. He found power and he found self-worth, but it was in the murder of others. I didn't find it boring. It wasn't, pow, pow, pow the whole way through, but I enjoyed the film. Like you, I thought it was, visually stunning. Joaquin was absolutely amazing.
Frances Conroy was good. I thought the casting overall was really, really well. All of the actors delivered great performances. I enjoyed Robert De Niro's character. Frances Conroy is always amazing. She does that role that she is very, very well. The sort of crazy mom thing, that's kind of her niche, and she does it more masterfully than anybody I can think of, which is amazing considering her start was in 6 Feet Under. Well, I don't know if it was her actual start, but kind of her big break was in 6 Feet Under, and she played this incredibly meek, mild, timid woman, and now we're seeing her in, I think American Horror Story has sort of set her free and shown people what she's capable of.
Yeah. And then the middle 80% of the film, if we're going to get a film about the Joker, this is exactly what I expected. For the kind of, we've had the first 10%, that was him with his medical issues. For the middle 80%, he becomes a serial killer. That's what we were always going to get. We can discuss the merits of whether we needed a Joker film another time. but I wasn't disappointed with what we got. It was very much expected. Then came the final 10 minutes of the film. He did his interview with Murray, which the whole film was kind of based around, and the interview was incredibly kind of dull and anticlimactic. Beyond that, that's where the film, and people have been talking all week about whether this is going to kind of glamorise, when it's going to glorify. What did the ending mean to you? Because to me, a guy that was a serial killer was carried out of a police car, like Jesus Christ being carried off the cross.
He was even laid out on top of the police car in the like crucifixion.
Yeah, you know, we've seen it happen to Neo, we've seen it happen to other people where they mimic this thing. It was very biblical. And up to this point, I don't know about you, but I was like, please, can we just get to the end of this film? I mean, I assumed he was going to be the guy that killed Thomas and Martha Wayne, and he'd walk down the alleyway by himself, and we would think, what an absolute piece of trash, and nobody would ever know who he was. But he was carried out of this police car, hundreds of acolytes, basically, all with the Joker mask around him. You know, I mean, what were your thoughts on that segment of the film?
It's like hugely problematic.
Yeah.
I mean, like, as you said, you know, I did identify with him for the first 10 minutes. You know, I've had my own problems.
Half the world probably do, don't they?
You know, anybody who's had, you know, mental health issues or just health issues in general, and trying to get the medical system to listen to you and to be treated in an effective way, and dealing with budget cuts and constraints and, you know, limits on how many therapy sessions you can have and shit like that. Like, that was very identifiable. Never once did I feel like this was a film about the Joker. You know, it was a great film about a guy who kind of lost his mind and got very destructive, but it wasn't the Joker. It had elements of the Joker. It was kind of like if Joaquin Phoenix's character, like if Arthur Fleck had been a fan of Batman and modeled himself after the character of the Joker. That was kind of what the film was to me. And the last 10 minutes with, you know, him being pulled out and everything, I was just sitting there thinking, like, it was exactly what I didn't want them to do. It was the direction I didn't want them to go. I mean, I wanted them to kill him. Just kill him off, be done with it. I would have been satisfied with him being locked up. I would have been satisfied with him kind of fading off into nothing and like disappearing into the shadows, as like you said.
And that was what was happening for a moment, wasn't it? He was in the back of the car. It was exactly a mirror image of Heath Ledger's Joker, but Heath Ledger was in control of that car. His head was out the window like a dog, you know, going to the beach. And then we thought, great, he's been locked away. You know, obviously that this city's in turmoil, anarchy. That's what the Joker kind of lives for. But his acolytes drove this ambulance into the car and freed him. They lifted him out like he was this. But you know, when you said if he died, I get what you're saying, but that would have been the only thing they could have done that would have been even worse, to make him a martyr.
Died as in like a not very public death.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'll take that.
The other thing that I found problematic was that the cause that got attached to him is a very serious and real world cause. The fact that the rich basically abuse the poor. I did find it interesting that Thomas Wayne was not cast as the benevolent philanthropist that he usually is.
Very interesting, yeah.
I'm fine with that. You know, Bruce Wayne can have his romanticized version of his dad, but, you know, let's show a billionaire for what a billionaire actually is. And I think attaching that cause and that issue of everybody below the elite is suffering at the moment, and it's a really valid and serious concern, and they've made this mass murdering psychopath the poster boy for it.
Yeah.
You know, it had the same sort of feeling as like V for Vendetta and other films like that, where, you know, the masses are rising up in defense of themselves, except it wasn't that. Like, it was, Joker even said himself, I'm not political. And so I think conflating the two things, it does make it seem like violence is the answer to these problems, and that it is, you know, if you're having a shit life, if the world's knocking you around, just grab a gun and go shoot some people, and that will make everything better, and you will be a hero to a huge mass of millions. And I think it's just the wrong message to be sending right now.
I believe in freedom of expression, and I would love to believe that every single person sees it as a cautionary tale. People who relate to his health issues and his mental health issues think, he went that way with it. Oh, what a shame. I'm going to be I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to go the good way. You know, I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to help people. That's not the world we live in, you know.
There are going to be people who look at this and say, yeah, that's exactly
he
right.
Won.
That's me. He won.
What a
good
great
for
guy,
him.
yeah.
And yeah, I think that's a problem. Particularly because of the amount of gun violence in the States.
This is a film that's going to, in America more than anywhere, is problematic.
That's that's
it goes without saying almost at this point. They're having Joker screenings with armed guards there this weekend, the week after. We know what happened in Aurora. It's so difficult because this film rightly should win a lot of awards. It's a visual spectacle. It's acted superbly well, but
the subject matter is really problematic.
Yeah, as much as freedom of expression exists, people have to just realise what audience they are sending this out to. They have to appreciate the world that we live in, because we don't live in some perfect world where people are going to see what's wrong here.
And let's just say, like, we looked around the theater before we watched it, and a vast majority of the people in the theater were white men. I don't want to say that like all white men are the problem, but
I mean, we all know what you're struggling to say. I think we can read between the lines.
So I think it's going to appeal to a very particular demographic of people for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how beautiful and amazingly well told this story is. We have to be smarter. We have to tell the right stories these days. We have to think about the consequences of what we're putting out there into the world. From Hollywood all the way down to anybody, people are willing to bend over backwards to take the wrong message out of media. And the next week, everybody's going to be glued to the news.
And there will probably be something.
And that will be obviously a tragedy. But it's just that this film, I don't think I've ever seen a film like it where they've done so well in one regard and they've been so fucking lax in another regard. Does that make sense? It could win the big five at the Oscars, and yet if one person dies, that's all the film will be remembered for. I'd go and see it again, but yeah, I think we've got concerns.
Yeah, I don't think I would see it again. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix was mesmerizing in his performance. I mean, it really kind of got me through the film.
I got more King of Comedy from it than I did Taxi Driver. I think if you can look for Taxi Driver in most films that involve like a single white guy, but I like the King of Comedy element. And it was like when Donald Trump was mocked by Barack Obama at the that dinner that they have, the press association dinner or something, and he looked down to Trump and he ridiculed him, and then 4 years later we know what happened. It was like this single white guy being undermined. Oh boo-hoo for me, the world is against me. This comedian plays this what was he called, Murray Franklin or something.
Murray Franklin
plays this clip of him, and he reacted badly to it, and that was the beginning. So visual spectacle, but problematic.
Don't go see this film in theaters. Steal it off somewhere. I'm advocating this. If you really want to watch this film, like, just go steal it from a streaming service.
Should there be a sequel?
No.
Should this be the beginning of a new world that doesn't necessarily have to include Joker?
No.
Okay, one more question. More one and dones like this, or do you want the DCEU to be...
I actually just bookmarked a tweet on Twitter like right before we went into the film that asked exactly the same question. I'm conflicted. The conflict comes from what the sequels are to. Like, if I say more sequels and they're like, okay, let's do a sequel with the Joker. I'm like, no, I don't want that. I want the DCEU back, basically. That's what I want. I want an MCU for DC fans.
Yeah.
I want it to feel like the comic book characters. I want it to feel like the stories and not just a story about some random person that happens to have elements that are similar to some of the characters in the comic books. Like, I want the characters that I like. And I didn't need a Joker origin film. It kind of went the way I expected it to. And, for all the positives that the film has, I don't really feel like it's added anything to the genre. So yeah, I guess I would go with more sequels rather than like one and dones.
I'd probably go with more one and dones. I think the DCEU from the very beginning shouldn't have had any origin films. I know that's a really bold statement to make.
I agree with you completely. We've had so many origin stories, particularly with Batman. We know Batman's story, and I just want to, like, the most annoying, frustrating moment of this film was the scene when Thomas and Martha Wayne get killed and we have the fucking pearls all over again. Why does everybody have to do that? Like, just once, can we have a Batman thing without that scene?
No, is the answer.
Alright, so that is our review of Joker. I think Jules would recommend seeing it.
I would, and I think it's going to do very well in awards season.
I recommend stealing it, so take your pick. Yeah, you can find us on patreon.com/geeknerdpod, facebook.com/thegeekly, or on Twitter @geeknerdpod, and our beautiful, beautiful website, which is geeknerdpod.com.
Cool. See you next week.